band or a new wave band or a heavy band or whatever they want. They have all different games they like, to put us in with. And we're not part of it. We're just U2, which is who we are. We're more interested in the cause, is the reason why somebody wants to knock somebody over the head with a bottle. We're more interested in the reason why he wants to do that than the fact that he does it in Northern Ireland, because we all have the violence in ourselves. We all have the ability to kick the cat, and it's not kick the cat, it's a mental violence.
Might spoil U2.
I hope it does.
What was it about U2 that led you to want to get them on the label?
Well, the name was one. I liked the name. I thought it was I just liked the name. The other was their commitment, really. They're really very fervent about their music and about they're a real group, U2, the real essence of the word. It's not like people who've gone around and looked for who's a good drummer or who's a good bass player and see how, it's something where the people are really, they move and think as one unit.
The sort of stability within the group has been that way for quite a few years. Before we were a band with a recording deal, while we were still playing little bars around Dublin. Our goals as a group have always been creative ones, never commercial ones. But as I can't remember who said it, but it's not arriving that's important, it's the footsteps to arriving that's important. And
they're very separated from each other. It's an extraordinary thing how isolated and insulated you become when you become a part of a traveling group of musicians, or a rock and roll group, or even as a solo artist, you're cut off, surrounded by your own people, good people, hopefully. You don't meet other people. When you do meet them, you have a mask on.
The surprising effect was that we became more aware of Ireland, and I suppose we'd gained a certain subjective view of Ireland, having been distanced from it by touring. We'd seen other cultures and other parts of the world, and suddenly it all came into perspective for us. So it was after we first started touring that we felt that we then could start commenting on our homeland.
You're in a position where you're like the band that has saved the world. Does that scare you at all? Do you feel like pulling back from that?
It's just the whale we were trying to say. The world is next year's project. It's a bitch, life, that is. And you need a band like U2 to tell you how much of a bitch it is. We're just into being in the band right now, and we don't see the Joshua Tree as in any way a peak for U2.
Things like political viewpoints, personal viewpoints are becoming more prominent, and maybe the music is sort of taking a lesser role. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it seems to be getting that way, to a point where everyone's more interested in what you've got to say about this,
sure.
and instead of you guys operating together as a musical group.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see that as well. Starting to see that people are actually taking U2 for one particular thing, be it be it their political point of view. And what we've been trying to stress is that U2 is not just about one thing or two things, it's about a whole lot of different things. And we don't make music for people to come along to and intellectualize about. We make music for all sorts of different reasons. If somebody wants to come along and just bang their head against the wall because they like the sound of the bass guitar, that's as relevant as anything. And that's important to get across to people, that there's no one area that U2 are interested in as such. There's a very broad spectrum. U2 leave themselves wide open. We leave ourselves wide open to criticism and to be misinterpreted. I mean, we do that, and sometimes we've got to take responsibility for that.
Wallpaper music, sort of music for elevators. Music has become so glossy, so dry. I don't know. There's no real spirit to it anymore. And I think rock and roll without a spirit is very empty. It's a very empty form, because rock and roll essentially was spirit. And if you think back to Elvis and whatever, right up through to somebody like Lennon or Dylan, people who put their lives on the line in their music.
We're the biggest cult group around. This is we're now achieving a level of success we always aimed to achieve. So it's been, I suppose, a culmination of a lot of hard work.
It sounds almost ugly to suggest that, having the success that you two have had doesn't satisfy you, but it doesn't, and that's the truth of it. And what we're looking for are goals, our aims, our musical goals, and we haven't achieved them. We're very unhappy. We're very unhappy about that. Should be an explosion. It's just going through the motions. Don't even plug your amplifier in. Go home.
We are a great live band. I don't think we're great in the studio yet. We've got to learn, like, they're two completely different mediums. The live one we've cracked, but in the studio we've still got to be able to translate what we do on stage into the studio, and that's something that we'll hopefully do over the next couple of records.
Hardest bit, and that's the hardest bit for us, is musically every night we're still struggling, really. When we got together, we weren't musicians, at all. We're not professional musicians even now, probably, even though we get paid. We were a bunch of mates before we were a band, and we formed the band because of that. Not because, Edge could play guitar. That came later. And Larry playing the drums, that all came later, really. I mean, he played in a military band for a while. We grew out of the whole punk ideal, which was anyone can just be in a band, anyone can get together and can write some songs and go out there and do it. And we did, that's really the story of U2. We just decided that this is what we wanted to do, and we went after it. And it's been a few years, but now we're getting it together.
Your families were supportive even in the early days. Did they get some of the benefits? They get to travel around with you and see you out here on stage?
They weren't all supportive. I mean, like Edge's mother, Mrs. Edge, we call her, had like a little Volkswagen, and she was really a cool lady, and she would like put all the gear and all the band in the Volkswagen. We'd be like 15, 16. Yeah. And she'd be, pick us up at 4 o'clock in the morning, to get home. She was out there, and so were we. So that worked. But my old man, like I came home at night, he'd be waiting at the top of the stairs with a submachine gun, several knives. And, it was just target practice.
But now your families are all thrilled, supportive, and proud.
Amen.
They're still waiting for us to get proper jobs. I mean, it's kind of like, well, you were lucky this time, but when are you going to go back to school and become a doctor? That sort of thing. But we just keep explaining to them, this is what we want to do. And
Larry Mullen Sr., like he still wants Larry Mullen Jr. to be a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
Now this record, Joshua Tree, is a lot about your American impressions. You said you have a great love of America. Why did you focus on America for this record, or what was the issue that was up for you?
Well, as an Irishman, I feel very close to America. We feel very close to America as an Irish band, because so many Irish immigrants, over 100 years, even since the Great Famine in the middle of the 19th century, they left, they took boats, trains, and later planes to America, the promised land for a lot of Irish people. And of course, we love America, we love to be here. And yet, we struggle with it sometimes, because it's worth struggling over, it's worth arguing about, it's worth criticizing, coming to grips with America.
Coming to grips, because America's, from our point of view, is like the very best and the very worst rolled into one.